And that's where we're going to start, Rob. In the NBA, I said it when we talked to Eddie House just about 30 minutes ago that for the first time in a while, we know roughly 3 to 4 weeks ago, ESPN did a story, a straw poll, with 100 of the MVP voters. Now, there's about 130 something, 120, 130, somewhere around there. I'm one of them. I was not in the straw poll. But of the 100 voters, and again, this was only 3-4 weeks ago, 77 of the 100 had Nikola Jokic as the MVP. Now, today, Vegas switched for the first time in a while. I don't know when the last time was, but Jokic has been the favorite for a while. Now, today, for the first time, he was not the favorite. It was instead Joel Embiid. It was Embiid minus 105, Jokic plus 150, Giannis third plus 350. And Rob, like we said, Vegas is not the voters, okay? So this doesn't mean that the voters have shifted. Right. But at least according to Las Vegas, Rob, Embiid is the favorite. You like this? What are your thoughts on this?
I don't believe that. Vegas wants people to bet money. I mean, that's their whole goal is to get enough people to bet on both sides so that they win, no matter who wins the award. So be careful with that. I'm not convinced totally, Chris, that the tide has turned that much. I know I was looking at some of the game logs for Jokic, and I know they haven't won, but he hasn't played poorly.
No, he rarely plays poorly.
Right, he hasn't played poorly, so it ain't like there's anything. And they've lost, they lose 4 in a row?
Yeah, and to some bad teams. San Antonio, was it Chicago?
They've lost.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much he's given up that so far. And again, it's right now, and I get it. Vegas, this is a chance, Chris, to move the line because they have lost 4 in a row, and Embiid's playing great. I'm not trying to discount Embiid or Giannis because I'm not. But that would be if 4 games made that many people change their minds, that would be interesting because if Philadelphia has a bad 4 games or something, like the stretch can turn around very quickly if they win the next 4. Now, they're playing tonight, I believe, Denver, right?
I don't have the schedule in front of me.
I'll look at it, Chris. But anyway, my point is, did some people start to relook at it? Sure. Do I think that Embiid is now on everybody's ballot for the people who vote? I'm not convinced of that.
Yeah, I do think that there is a bit of a sea change. Now, it doesn't mean, as I said, these aren't necessarily the voters. So I'm not saying Jokic isn't still ahead. But when you're a voter, whoever you vote for, you do have a responsibility to really pay close attention to these guys and these top candidates and what they're doing. And yes, Denver's on a 4-game losing streak. They've lost to some bad teams. It's 4 games out of 82. So I don't think anybody's overreacting to the 4 games. But it's not just the 4 losses for Denver. It's the way Philadelphia's playing, powered by Embiid. Philadelphia now has won 6 straight games and beat some good teams, Cleveland and Milwaukee and Minnesota. Portland, I mean, they're not great, but they got Damian Lillard. And Embiid, Rob, has been phenomenal. In this month, Embiid now has 7 games, but he's averaging 36.5 points on 48% shooting from 3.
Yeah, but his team is still 3rd in the conference, right?
But they got a better record than Denver. They play in a tougher schedule.
Right, but
Denver don't play this tough of a schedule. They're not, just like the East used to be the weaker conference. Now the West might be a little deeper, I think it's probably a little deeper. But as far as the elite team, the majority of a lot of people would tell you Milwaukee and Boston are the best teams in the NBA. And maybe they throw Philly, if not number 3, top 4, or certainly 5. And so I think you got to look at the overall record, not just the seed. And Philly's had the best record, in the East for a while now. Nice stretch. And I think that is one of the things that's powering Embiid. And like I said, Rob, we also, there have been a lot of people talking about it on TV, and that's only a handful of people. I mentioned, Michael Wilbon, Stephen A. Smith, myself, Nick Wright. It's not like it's a ton of people on TV, obviously.
Yeah,
who are voters.
There's way more writers who are covering the league, right, who have a vote.
But a lot of us who have talked about it have been with either Embiid or Giannis. And I think one thing I've stressed is two sides to the ball. And I'm not trying to say Jokic isn't worthy and Jokic isn't great. He's awesome. But when it comes to the defensive side of the ball, there's no comparison. He's not in the same league as Giannis and Joel Embiid. They are elite level defenders, and because of them and a few other of the teammates too, they're two of the best defensive teams in the league. Denver's not. That may cost Denver when it comes to the playoffs. They're a mediocre defensive team. And the other thing, Rob, and Jokic, again, night in, night out, his numbers are fantastic. But does he have the moments? I can think of some moments with Embiid. Last night, heck, for Steph Curry, Rob, they lost. But that was a moment when Steph was ridiculous. But Embiid, 36 and 18 last night, 4 blocks in a win at Cleveland. Cleveland's a top team. That was like a moment. And one of Embiid's moments came against Jokic back in February when the Philadelphia beat Denver. And Embiid put up 47 and 18. And Rob, in the fourth quarter, all game long, he had 47 points. But all game long, Jokic, this was the rare big game where you actually had the stars who play the same position really guarding each other, or at least, Jokic was guarding Embiid. And Embiid just took it to him. Step backs, mid-range, threes, drove by him for layups and dunks. And Jokic had 24 and 8 rebounds and 9 assists. And so that was a moment. So I think when it's close, and this is close, I'm not saying it's a runaway for Embiid, Giannis, Jokic, but when it's close, things like that do matter. I don't know if it's affecting, it's obviously affecting Vegas. I don't know if it's affecting the other writers, but it's something that I'm certainly looking at in an airtight race. I think little things like that.
That's
we talk about it, Rob.
nitpick.
We nitpick.
I hear you, and you make a good case, but I don't think that those writers are on the same page as you and Wilbon and some of the other people who have covered the league for a long time and look at a lot of different things, the historical part of it and all that. They're going to look at some numbers, and they're going to look at. I don't know what the number was that they were so enamored of, Chris. I don't know if it's PER or whatever analytical number. And they're going to look at the number he had the last 2 years, and they're going to look at the number he has this year, and that's going to play a bigger part than, like you're talking about, a moment or where they are in the standings. If they're number 1 seed, then they're going to say, well, the Sixers finished third, but they were 1 game better than the Nuggets. You know what I mean? Overall record. They'll be like, he played on a team that was the number 1 seed out West. He had better numbers than he had last year when he won. And it's going to be hard for them. And I'm not saying it's right, but I'm saying if you go against your own analytics, then it's hard in the future to continue to count on that. And that is what you're up against. And when I say you, Chris, I mean voters like you who maybe take in the whole thing. Because for them, it's just going to be a number. And that's unfortunate because I don't think that that's the nature of it, but that's what people do.
Well, and look, and I think I'll be.
You know what I'm saying, though? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, but I hope the dudes aren't robots. And I get it. If that's their thing, I mean, you got freaking GMs who solely go by the numbers. All right. And we always say, Rob, in whatever sport, baseball, basketball, to a lesser degree, but football too, the numbers, the analytics are part of it, but they shouldn't be the entire defining factor. I'm talking about the analytical numbers, the advanced statistics. Because Nick Wright did a great job last week talking about this, how the advanced, at least some of them, like box score, defensive plus minus, shows that Jokic is one of the best defenders ever. We know that's not the case. We know that's not the case. Rob, remember a few years, it was more than a few years ago now. Remember when Kawhi was in San Antonio? You may not remember this, but Kawhi was in San Antonio, one of his latter years there, and the analytical numbers showed that the Spurs were a better defensive team when Kawhi was on the bench. Now, that's when Kawhi was an absolute beast defensively. Right. And these numbers somehow showed that they were better without him on the floor defensively. So some of these numbers can be, they skewed. They're not as, exact as some of the analytical, guys would have you believe. And so that's why you got to watch. I know they're watching. I don't want to insult them. Watching the games, though, looking at the eye test, looking at moments, not just a moment, but moments. How is a guy impacting the game? Is he putting fear in the hearts of the opponent? Is he taking over the game? Is he taking it over on both ends of the floor at times? I'm not going to act like every MVP winner's been a great defender. Nash wasn't. Steph isn't.
And let me give you some numbers, Chris, just the PER. The Joker is at 31.6, Chris. His first MVP was at 31.1, 32.8 last year. And Giannis and Embiid both have lower PER. Giannis 28.7, Embiid right behind him 31.2, and the Joker's averaging a triple-double. So I'm just giving you and those are close numbers, especially Embiid is really close, not Giannis as much. But he still leads in that, and he has a triple-double, which he's never had. So those are some of the numbers. And obviously you still got, 10, 12, 14 games, 12 games left. So they're games. This the game.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't come down.
But he still leads in those.
It shouldn't come down to sole PER. Well, he leads in the advanced numbers. Right. I mean, and lead Rob Jokic's PER is 31.6. Embiid's is 31.2. So I mean, even if you want to go by that, it is right. It's right there.
Yeah, that's the number, right? Yeah.
I also know Embiid's averaging like 9 more points a game than Jokic. And so Giannis, in terms of Giannis, who's fourth in PER, Rob, Giannis has played the bulk of the season. Pretty much when you look at the way Chris Middleton's actually played when he's been healthy, he's played the whole season without his second best player, Rob. And they got the best record in the league. So Giannis isn't out of this thing, in my opinion.
See, I think Embiid has a better shot than Giannis.
I mean, he might have a better shot as far as, but I'm saying, if you tell me who should be in the hunt, I think those three guys are neck and neck. And we talked finally before we go to the callers, Rob, we talked about it before. Remember in the 80s and maybe parts of the 90s, they used to have this IBM award. And the league had its regular MVP award voted on by writers, and then they had the IBM award. And the IBM was, IBM was the big computer company. And they had their MVP award, for basketball players in the NBA. And it was strictly numbers because it was a computer-based, business, obviously. And David Robinson won the most. So if you just go by the numbers, then you don't necessarily get the best player. And all shout out to the Admiral, who was a legitimate Hall of Famer, but still, he didn't deserve the most MVPs of all time. Charles Barkley won several. It favored bigs because they got more rebounds, but Robinson won 5 of them which was more than anybody. And almost all of them were big men. Rob Grant Hill and Michael Jordan were the only non-bigs to win it. And that was from like 83 to 2002. So